Hello, welcome to the CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the motivator, DeAndrew, here with Alistair Weaver. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Matt. I've just had a really fun week driving the new Corvette ZR1 right
Yes.
at the Circuit of the Americas. Unfortunately, it's under the strictest legal embargo, so we can't talk about it for a couple of weeks at least.
Yeah.
But
What a way to open the show.
what
Tease
a
us
way to
with
open
the
the show.
coolest car
Basically,
out there and go, we'll see you in a few weeks and tell
do you
you
know
what
what that
happened.
was? I just realized what a terrible opening that was. That was the movie trailer. Stay with us, people. Listen to this show,
Yeah.
and then come back in a week's time. I forget when the
Or two,
embargo
we'll,
is.
we'll have to
It's a
figure
week. I
out.
think it's next week's time, and we're going to have a great show talking all about the ZR1. But
Well,
stay with us because we've got a great show coming up.
I mean, to say that you made it back in one piece with a smile on your face might be a good enough teaser because we have high hopes for that car and it wasn't like, you know,
I give you one clue to I have these like little Whoop gadgets on my wrist, those like fitness tracker things.
yeah.
And it said activity. It said activity sort of detected, and they could
Yeah.
go in and select motor racing, and then it sort of calculates your, like your exertion levels. And I was like, I must have been trying pretty hard for like it to recognize that I was like doing something. So
Yeah.
actually, right, my little gadget recognized that I was like on a circuit and going fast and all the rest of it. It's really so. Yeah, it's a mega thing. I just can't talk about what it's like to drive. I can say safe to say it's quite fast.
Good. That's exactly what
That's
we
about
were
as far as I can
expecting.
go. It's quite fast.
But we have the equally exciting Toyota RAV4 to talk
Oh,
about. We're going to get into that. All right. Before we get started, let me tell you
stay
about Bet
with us,
Online.
people.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs. And BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from MLB, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains your best online source for your sports wagering info. In between games, head on over to the Bet Online Casino for all the top Vegas style games, including poker and their live casino. Bet Online, the game starts here. So this
So
actually is big news. It's maybe not quite as fun as taking the ZR1 onto a track or wherever you guys were,
you were
but
reading that. You were reading that ad out, and I was just thinking, what a terrible hash I just made of the introduction. It's like every rule broken. Here's, here's something you could have won, but you haven't. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Just stay with us. Stay with us. Have a bit of patience. But yeah, Toyota RAV4 is a
Toyota
big,
RAV4.
big,
This
big
is
deal.
significant. This is what everybody's buying.
It is.
I mean, looking at the data, right? Like everyone's buying a Toyota RAV4. I mean, there's this kind of this RAV4 versus CRV, Honda CRV. Uh, but this is big news for Toyota, and I guess we can get into it. But some significant things is not just one version. They're doing kind of sporty versions and off-road versions and street versions, and giving you a lot of options for the Toyota RAV4.
They are. I mean, just to give you a sense of scale, they sold over 475,000 in the US last year. So once you get past the big trucks, once you get past the F-150 and the Silverado, this is basically and model wise up there as well. But this is the default American family car. And it's always, as you say, vied with the CRV for that title, but hugely important for Toyota. I think there's a stat that they sell more RAV4s than they sell all of their other SUVs combined. So you can imagine, like, if your chief engineer is something, it's like very much a don't screw it up formula. And, we went and had a look at it. We haven't driven it yet, but we've had a good poke around it. And it's kind of what you'd expect. It's basically the same size. I think it's got the same wheelbase as it had last time. The big change, the big headline is that it's gone hybrid only. I mean, Toyota's been doing this for a while now. We've seen it with Camry. Now on the RAV4, hybrid only. So a choice between either a plug-in, which they're saying has got 50 miles of range, which actually is a pretty decent number, particularly if you're an urban dweller, or a kind of more standard hybrid system. So big news is hybrid only. Rest of it is pretty much what you'd expect. But as you said, they're actually starting to build a little bit more variety into the lineup. So you've got a Woodland edition, which is kind of a light off-roader, and then a GR Sport, at the top of the range, which is not like an all-out kind of like GR Corolla type level of sportiness, but has a kind of slightly different vibe, different tires, slightly reachier in the suspension. It's got a roof spoiler and stuff. So it's trying to, it's
But
you know,
kind of different front end, kind of a
yeah,
sportier
it looks.
look to it.
I mean, I haven't seen it in real life. I've only seen the pictures and the video that Nick on the team did, but it has kind of a nice look to it. Got a black roof, which visually lowers the whole thing. Big alloys, different front end treatment, some GR badging. I kind of looked and thought that's a good looking truck. It's not. It's not. They were never going to go all out and do something radical. You just cannot screw up a car that you sell 500,000 a year of. But it seems like the big steps forwards, obviously hybrid only, but also the interior, which was starting to look a bit tired. They've gone for a much more kind of chunky, slightly more off-roader vibe, similar in some ways to the latest Forerunner. Obviously Tacoma's a big success for them, and that is the zeitgeist at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've seen it with the Honda Passport, we've seen it with the CRV, has now got the Trail Sport. Everybody is going for this kind of overlanding, take it to the beach type vibe. So Toyota's all in as well.
I mean, we spoke last week about Mazda, the CX-5 versus the 50, the
Yeah.
CX-50, right? It's just, some plastic cladding around it, a little bit more ground clearance around the wheel arches, a little bit more ground clearance. But seeing Toyota kind of follow that same path with the RAV4.
Yeah, it's a fashion thing. I mean, the only thing I would say, and I think there's sometimes people kind of lose, and I'm sort of guilty of it as well, is they look cool. It's a bit like if you buy the Rubicon version of the Jeep, even if you don't do serious off-roading, it looks like the cool Jeep to buy. But as soon as you put like off-road tires on something and increase the ground clearance, the on-road driving dynamics almost by default are not going to be as good. The steering's not going to be good. The ride quality is unlikely to be as good. There's going to be more tire noise. It's going to roll a little bit more. So unless you're like genuinely going skiing or up a dirt track where you need extra ground clearance, it's probably not the right choice unless you just want it because it looks cool.
Yeah, that was so. And because they're all hybrids, you're likely chasing after the best miles per gallon. And I'm going to guess that once you put more of the off-road tires on it with that Woodland edition, the MPGs are going to suffer a little bit.
Yeah, you got more rolling resistance. You got probably the aerodynamics suffer a little bit if you've raised it. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably not, probably not a deal breaker for people, but it's worth thinking about. Yeah, I mean, looking at the different options, front wheel drive or all wheel drive, they give you 226 horsepower, which is competitive, or 236 with all wheel drive. I'm guessing they give you an extra 10. I'm guessing that's to offset the additional weight, so you get similar performance. And then you've got a plug-in hybrid, which is 320 horsepower, which is significant. And as I mentioned earlier, they're saying up to 50 miles of driving range, which at that point, I think plug-in hybrids start to make sense. 50 miles, which might be, let's say, if you're driving around town or something like that, it's your daily commute. I feel like that level, it starts to make sense, and plenty of power, 325. And weirdly, only some of them are going to have fast charging as well. But why you'd really want a fast charge a plug-in hybrid, I'm never quite sure about that.
At 50 miles of range for the plug-in hybrid, there's, like you said, the regular hybrid is sort of a set it and forget it, just get it and forget it, and it does its own thing. But at 50 miles of range, if you can plug it in at home, I mean, even if you're just doing it overnight, you plug it in at night, you could just probably plug that into a regular outlet, just a 110 outlet, and leave it overnight, and you get your 50 miles of range. And the reason why I bring that up is because if that's the case and that happens, you could probably make that happen, is you don't have to invest more money into rewiring stuff at home and putting a charger in or whatever. There's probably a plug or a portable charger that it comes with, and you just plug it into a normal outlet, and then overnight you're good to go. You get your 50 miles of range.
The only thing I'd say if you're going to do that, sensible consumer advice is you might want to check how your circuit's wired, because it's a bit like plugging your hairdryer in. You got to make sure that it's not the same one that, it's not that's not the 10 amp supply or whatever. Because
Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to blow up the fridge because because you plugged your car in. So
Yeah.
it's a good theory, but you still got to just check it out a
But
little
you
bit.
could, but that's much easier to do than spending $7,000 on an electrician. Like you could
It is.
literally open the box and see what size amperage is on, on those outlets and stuff in your garage or wherever you're getting it done, whatever you're
Yeah, and
plugged.
it's also worth it. I don't know if Toyota's going to offer a deal on like installing stuff. A lot of manufacturers with their EVs and stuff now are offering deals on installation. I think I paid like $700 or something to have the plug installed in my garage. It wasn't that crazy. I think the box was 500, and maybe I
Yeah.
paid, maybe I was like a grand all in. But then it's done, and you sort it. But that's if your box can handle it and you've got enough spare current. If you've got like a 20 amp, got a 50 amp fuse, which you're going to need 50 amp fuse left in your fuse box. You call it a fuse or breaker box over here, isn't it? Not
Yeah.
fuse box. Breaker
Yeah.
box. Yeah.
And then, I mean, getting into some of the standout features of it, like we were saying,
Yeah. Better
exterior
tech
changes,
inside.
different versions, your street version, your off-road version, or sort of your off-road version, your performance version. So cosmetically on the outside, there's some changes, some improvements on the inside, depending on the trim model, the size of the screen and stuff that you get. Uh,
Yeah, everything's now focused on like a big touch screen. They've also moved
yeah,
some of the, which people don't tend to like, but people have moved some of the switches for things like, climate and everything else onto the center screen. So you've got less physical switches than you had before. But depending on how far they've gone with that, as long as they left the primary controls as switches, I think that'll be fine.
there's some
And
nifty little things on the inside that I noticed as well, like pretty good storage, kind of pockets all over. The center armrest can flip over and create some like a like a little tray or something, like if you're just parking and you're taking notes or eating a sandwich or something.
yeah,
So
the in
it's
and
got
out burger tray, isn't it?
yeah, it pretty much is. Yeah, and that's the one in my F-150. That's all I use it for. The shifter folds down and you flip it over and you sit there and you eat lunch and you wipe off your crumbs and then you fold it back.
Yeah, and they spend the rest of the afternoon sitting in the aroma of cheap burger.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no what else do we talk about? I mean, yeah, decent line. It's a Toyota, right? It's got a sensible lineup. It's going to be I think they keep it. They haven't announced official pricing, but it's not going to be wildly different. So reckon on 35 to 50 grand. Obviously Volkswagen has a new entry in this market. CRV has just been updated. So there's kind of a the Mazda CX-5 is getting on a bit. CX-50 I'd rather have from Mazda, but there's some decent alternatives in this marketplace. And when you look at the Edmunds rankings and our rating of the old car, it was time for a change. We weren't massive fans of it when it came out as new.
yeah.
And over time, it had kind of slipped behind the opposition. So this is much needed from Toyota. They're calling it all new, and from everything we've seen, it's pretty much the case. So I think it should be a significant step forward. The only thing it's not is bigger, and like rear space is okay. Doesn't look like it's substantially improved. So that'll be an area that
Yeah.
we'll be scrutinizing. So
But until you guys actually get your hands on it and be able to run it through the tests and measurements, um, we don't know if they were able to find a little extra space on the inside or a little bit more leg room. I
yeah.
mean, not a noticeable like you can see it difference, but maybe once you start measuring, you'll find if there's another little, half inch here, quarter inch there.
Yeah, I think that's the case, and in this market, everybody compares themselves to each other, so I think it's quite hard to do
Yeah.
a big leap forward. And obviously, Toyota has its strategy, so they've got, you're walking from RAV4, well, walking from Corolla Cross to RAV4 to Highlander to Grand Highlander to Sequoia. Have I missed any out? Versa in there, and then you've got the Crown SUV.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
pepper the market with
Land
SUVs.
Cruisers and
Land Cruisers, yeah, I missed the Land Cruiser, didn't I? So, they're peppering the market with like more off-road focus for and a Land Cruiser. Then
yeah.
you've got more road focus, which is, Corolla, RAV4, Highlander, Grand Highlander. So they pepper the market with SUV. So they're very kind of religious on how these things click together in the lineup.
Yeah.
And everybody just looks at the market and what everybody else is doing. So, did we expect like a massive leap forward? No, but it seems like a very sensible evolution of the existing RAV4 and of where the market is. And of course, the
Yeah.
big standout being hybrid only, which should result in good fuel consumption. And, we've seen it with the Camry that the market's moved on. So it's not like people look at the hybrid and say, oh, God, it's a Prius and it's this and it's that. It's just a car now.
Yeah.
And I think I think it'll be exactly the same with the RAV4, that it's just a RAV4. And yeah,
Now
it's
you
got a,
just decide if you want plug-in hybrid or not plug-in.
yeah. And do you
Because
want
the
all-wheel
rest is
drive?
just hybrid. You want to plug it in or not plug it in. And then from there it's the trim models and price,
Yeah.
Uh,
And I've no issue with that, because actually, it's certainly in a vehicle like this, all the hybrids bringing is a little bit more torque and better fuel consumption. So makes sense.
and then as we start to get into the issues of like tariffs and what does that mean, probably not a lot on this car. I
God,
think
I
it's
mean,
mostly built here.
uh, yeah, I can't. I don't know the part component and stuff on this. It's. I mean, who knows, right? It's still. I mean, as we record this show, there was
Yeah.
a new thing about like 50% tariffs on the EU, and I don't know. It's
And then
just
as car companies start to look more and more into how they're going to absorb some of that,
yeah.
um, if you're high profit margin like Porsche, there's ways you can do it. But also if you're really high volume and profitable like Toyota is with the RAV4,
Yeah.
you could probably absorb some of that. The
It,
manufacturer can.
yeah, because the RAV4 is currently built in Japan, Canada, and the US. So yeah, most of it's like Woodstock in Ontario in Canada. So yeah, I don't know. To be honest, there's a question for Toyota. I haven't really looked into exactly how they're going to break it, where this is going to be built, and how they're going to do that. Because
Yeah.
obviously,
Which
it's
is
not like they're making this up now. This decision was made, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago at the beginning of the program. So
Yeah, they're
yeah,
just showing us the car now, but I know that they could hesitate on going, here's the vehicle, pricing is still to be
yeah.
determined. We'll let you know.
It,
Because that's
it
the one little final thing they can do at the last minute and go, listen, it's going to be $700 more on the base price.
Yes, or yeah, and what they'll be saying is, okay, RAV4, like what can we realistically price the RAV4 at? And then do we absorb some of the costs? Do we put Sequoia up by a grand, because a grand on a Sequoia is probably less significant than $500 on a RAV4, because it's
Right.
a different market, different price
Yeah.
point. Yeah, it's tough out there, folks. It really is.
Right. And it's funny because as we sit here and try to navigate what the car manufacturers are doing and the government's doing, the car manufacturers are still probably just as unclear as the rest of us. They're
I can
still,
say one thing though, that moving on from tires, one thing that we're not going to do. Last time the RAV4 was launched, I was fresh in the US, and it was the end of 2018, obviously pre-pandemic and stuff. And I was like, okay, I want to get like a team building. I want to get my team together. We need a team
yeah, yeah,
building
yeah.
and bonding moment, and also we need something that kind of like literally puts us on the map. So we came up with this idea of doing 48 states in a week, full 48 contiguous states, and even learned a new word, contiguous, touching. And we did 7,000 miles, all 48 states, non-stop in a week in a RAV4. It's still online somewhere. If you Google Edmunds RAV 48 states, it brings it up. And this was our social media wasn't what it is now. And so we didn't get that much interest, and Toyota didn't get behind it. We borrowed the car from Toyota, and I remember making the call and said, right, we want a press car, and this is what we're going to do. Are you in? And they gave us the car, and we thought, they're all going to share it. All the Toyota dealers are going to be talking about it. None of that happened. So all we ended up doing was driving around I did the first leg, and I think we did 30 hours from Maine down through New York. And I think if I remember rightly, we ended up in like North Dakota. But
Yeah.
it
Okay.
sounds terrible, but actually there's a kind of sort of masochistic fun in doing a trip like that. Three of us in the vehicle, sleeping in the vehicle, 30 hours non-stop, just stopping for fuel. It was great, but we're not doing it again.
And to think now, 7 years ago, you guys were doing this back
Yeah.
when driving around with a giant hashtag on the side of your truck was a cool thing. Now, eh,
Yeah, well, that was also part of it. People are going to see us. It's going to be talked about so much that people are going to see it and be
yeah,
like, oh my God, it's the RAV48 States car. We'll be
yeah, we
approached.
saw the car, we took pictures of it.
Yeah, yeah. It was early. We were learning. But it was a great team. It was a great sort of team building,
And I'm sure it was
great team
great to
building thing.
like get out there and see the country and
It
drive
was great
around.
for me. Like I'd never been to North
I was
Dakota.
just gonna say
I'd
because
never been.
you were freshly here. You were
I was fresh off the boat.
That's right.
Also, looking at some of these pictures, there's a few of us, myself included, have gone a bit grey in the meantime. It's funny. Anyway, it was a great endeavor. Um, not doing it again.
Yeah, there was a bunch of videos you guys did too. I realized.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. It's like a little trip down memory lane.
When did you guys do this? Because every picture looks cold.
November 2018, I think it was something like that. So it was the end of, yeah, it was the end of 2018. I remember starting it off in Maine, and it was freezing, and that was one of the challenges, like how much snow are we going to have en route?
Well, looking at the pictures, I would say a
Yeah.
lot. This could have been a summer
It,
trip, by the
I,
way.
well, because we had to wait for the car to come out. That was the challenge. The car needed to be new, so we had to do it when the car was new. I always remember also like a bit one of those kind of learning moments about California. We arrived. I was like, okay, so some of this will be snowy, but anyway, no drama. It's all-wheel drive. And then it was like, oh, hang on a minute. Half the team hasn't driven in snow because they've all lived in California their whole lives.
Yeah.
So we had to choose the drivers quite carefully. But even if you're 6'4" like me, it gets a bit cramped, but it's no worse than flying. It's like flying, flying at the back of the plane. So, but for
Yeah.
30 hours.
Well, I'm sure it was a fun trip. New RAV4. Do we know when that's coming out? I mean, we
Uh,
just did the announcement on it and did
it
the.
is obviously later this year. I don't have an exact on sale for it. Maybe it's, I'm just trying to think if it's on the piece. When it goes on sale later this year.
Right. So, which also means like, listen, the current RAV4 is still a great vehicle. Maybe you start to see some deals on that before the new one comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't call it great. It's tired, but like, yeah, if you can pick one up cheap, it's a reliable family hauler.
Yeah.
It needs yeah, big news for Toyota.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay. The other thing this has come up a few times, but now that you guys finally got your hands on it, uh, Hyundai Ionic 9. We've seen the
Yeah,
Kia EV9 that you guys really liked. And then we saw the Ionic 9 I think we first saw it at the LA Auto Show
we did. Yeah, last
in
November.
November, and it looked good. And then we were talking a little bit about Genesis not having this, not having an electric EV. I'm sorry, an electric SUV. So Hyundai kind of has to fit the bill. So going from base model to the nicest version, it kind of made sense for them to have uh, some trim model that was nice, kind of like Range Rover does with the autobiography, right? You get a
Yeah,
$120,000 Range Rover, or you get the $200,000 Range Rover
yeah.
if you really just want the best of the best or the nicest of the nice,
Or
right?
the 350 grand special edition they keep doing. But yeah, I
Yeah,
take your
yeah,
point.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
So Ionic 9, it's look, we're big fans, as we've discussed on the show, the Kia EV9 on which it's based. It was the Edmunds top rated best the best. So it's got great. It's hard to screw it up when you're basing it on a product that good. Of course, Hyundai and Kia are one company. And what's interesting about this vehicle, I think, there's been a lot of talk about Kia and Hyundai a bit too close. Well, they've done a good job of separating the two. The EV9 is kind of a little bit more kind of avant-garde, a little bit more sporty, maybe a bit more youthful. This is much more towards kind of sophisticated luxury. I mean, it genuinely looks luxurious.
Yeah.
Very different looking to the Kia, and
It kind
inside as
of
well.
kind of looks like a Lucid in the front. Definitely got some Volvo going on in the back.
Yeah, quite pronounced kind of
But
rear wheel arches. It's
yeah,
it's distinctive, and I do think because they weren't doing a Genesis version, it's given them more license to create something that feels much more upmarket. They're not trying to kind of protect the luxury brand. They can go all in on it, and the interior feels more luxurious than the Kia as well. I don't get me wrong. I for me, I like the way the Kia looks. I love the interior of the Kia. I think it's got kind of real. It feels really different. But this is going much more down the luxury route. So it's kind of it's an interesting place as well because it's not cheap. I mean, you're going to be sort of 60 to 80 grand,
yeah.
but at 80 grand, people are going to say that's a hell of a lot of money to spend on a Hyundai, but it's a lot of car. And it's also undercuts things like the EX90, the Volvo, Rivian R1S, other three-row EVs are
Yeah.
all even more
Lucid that's
expensive.
coming out too, right?
The Lucid that's coming out is going to be more expensive. So it's kind of undercutting all of those, but it's still a chunk of change.
Is it the same powertrain as the EV9 now that you've had
Yeah.
it and you've driven it? Is it essentially the same? I think they're trying to squeeze a little bit more range out of it, and I'm not sure if it's just software at this point or if they did anything different.
Yeah, we'll put it through the Edmunds EV range test. I think some of it might be aerodynamics. Obviously it's a different body. I don't know what the difference is in tires. They're big. It's interesting on the event this week. The event that we can't talk about, even if I introduced it. I was talking to a lot of the Michelin guys about EV tires. Like, why are they so
Yeah.
expensive? What's significant about them? And the tires are so significant to maximizing range and performance. And they were saying, people go in, and if you want to go in with your EV and chuck some cheap tires on it because you look at the price and say this is insane, and you put something cheap on it, your range is not just it's not going to just like knock the edge off it. It's going to plummet.
Yeah.
Tires are so critical to these vehicles. So you got a lot of aero going on here, tires. But I think it's a handsome vehicle. I don't think anybody going to go and rock up in that, and anybody's going to think it's anything other than an upmarket choice. I haven't driven it myself yet. I'm looking forward to getting one in the office. And as I say, like as a family hauler, our EV9 Edmunds has gone back now, but that was like my go-to family car, unless I had to drive really long distance. But if it was 100-mile journey or something, that was my go-to family car. I thought it was great.
The Ionic 9 is also interesting because there's a couple different motor options, and normally when you see that, there's a big variation in range between the high performance model and the longest range model could often have, 50, 80 miles of range difference. Something that might have, 330 miles of range drops down to 280 miles of range. But this, between the base models and the high performance or the top of the line models, not a huge difference. Like they're all over 300 miles of range from like I don't know, low threes to like 330. Is that right?
Yeah, I noticed that, and I haven't sort of dug into it on the whether I'm presuming it's the same battery, or no, it may well be that the smaller motor to keep the cost down is also a smaller battery. So apologies, I should check this before coming on air. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
just think that as we get down the road and get more testing on this and digging into the specs and digging into putting it, getting it on the Edmunds range test,
yeah.
we could start to see like the reality of like for certainly I would think that you guys would want to get your hands on the base model with the longest range and the high performance model and do the EV range test, the Edmunds test on both to see really are we starting to close the gap
But
on
again, it comes back to what I was saying earlier
yeah.
because it's not like an electric motor is not like having tons of horsepower is necessarily damaging efficiency. But you will see, like if you go for like Ionic 5N, for example, it's on a much more aggressive tire as well.
Right.
So it's not just as straightforward as saying, oh, power equals range or whatever. There's a lot of different factors going on. So that might well be the case as well, that they're not going for a sporty setup. They're actually just going for, it's just giving you more all-wheel drive, more performance.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. It's quite a complex equation, if you like. So yeah, I mean, all of them 300 miles. Assuming we replicate that, and that's realistic, then that does feel a decent range for a vehicle which is the family road trip car. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the problem with these three rows. These are the vehicles that you would want to take on the family vacation. It's Memorial Day weekend as we record this. I'm heading up to Santa Barbara on Sunday, and I'm taking a truck. I'm taking a gas truck. But if I was taking an EV, I'd like to get there and back because I don't want to be getting there and
Yeah.
then, stressing about where to charge.
Are you taking an SUV or are you taking the Ram? You guys
I'm
got to
taking the
do
Ram.
taking the Ram.
Taking the Ram.
Yeah. Did you figure out how you're going to put stuff in the bed of the truck? Did you get a cover for it
I've got the
yet?
cover for it. And you got the Ram box on the side. There's like
Yeah.
little cubbies on the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but also I can
Okay.
get like three people across the back with two car seats. I love trucks. I can get like a proper person in the middle, two car seats. Everything goes in the back.
Yeah.
It's
Listen,
0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. Happy days. Thank
I
you.
mean, I drive mine, but yeah, to your point about the tires for the EVs, when I took my Lightning, we were getting it ready for the SEMA show. We went to a wider tire, a stickier Nitto tire instead of a
Yeah.
275, went to like a 305. And I've been riding on that for, the past 6, 7 months. Yeah, it kills the range.
Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks good and it handles great,
Yeah.
and but
Yeah.
it kills the range.
It
So I'm
kills the
actually kind
range.
of eager to go it back.
Yeah. And then if you start towing, yeah. So
Yeah. Uh, okay. All right. So Ionic 9, something to look forward to. We'll get a lot more information about it. We just wanted to touch on it because you guys got your hands on it and got to give it just sort of a first impression on it.
it's also a neat segue into our final subject.
Yes, EV mandates, right? So
Yes.
California is the
Stay with us,
leading.
everybody. It's an exciting topic.
Well, we've kind of talked about this before. Was quite a bit. Is California was leading the charge on making everything EV, pulling out gas engine cars and kind of forcing people into buying new cars that you start to buy become EV, right? So it's called an EV mandate. And a bunch of other states would follow California. So California was leading the charge, but it was going to cover something like 40% of America. And the issue again here is not that EVs are bad. Like you said, you've got one, I've got one. It's the choice. And that's been a big topic is you're taking the choice away. If somebody wants an EV, let them get an EV. If you don't want an EV, if you want a hybrid, if you want a gas engine, let them get that. And that's been the hot topic. And it's been at the it's definitely got the attention of SEMA, and over several months here, maybe even the past year or so, we've had Mike Spagnola, the CEO of SEMA, on several times, and he was talking about their efforts in Washington D.C. to fight this EV mandate and give people the choice. And it sounds like they have been successful.
Yeah, I just read I mean, this is a big news this week that'll have, significant ramifications for, potentially decades to come, at least the next decade. This sort of now, but I just read the press release, and I mean, it shows. I don't want to I'm not really taking a political stance. I'm just as somebody who has read thousands of press releases in their career. This one really stood out. You sent it to me, Matt, and I was reading the language. This is CEO of
Yeah.
SEMA. There is just zero attempt to be diplomatic. I'm going to read you a line from it. Majority Leader John Thune and Speaker Mike Johnson to look beyond the opposition's lies and underhanded effort to undermine the will of the people. I mean, like, don't hold back.
Yeah, listen, they're behind it. They've been aggressive about fighting
Yeah.
this. So
And then in the next
yeah,
paragraph, it's like SEMA was and never will be anti-EV. So it's like it's you're reading like, okay, so but yeah, I mean that's the only thing that struck that whole thing is how sort of, I mean, look, politics is polarized to the nth degree at the moment in the US and most of the rest of the world, but it's staggering how, like, sort of aggressive and sort of emotional the whole thing has got. I know this is people's livelihoods, and that's very much the perception. And if this mandate comes through, then it really impacts the aftermarket scene and the tuning scene and everything else that goes with it. I mean, on a broader kind of industry level, looking beyond SEMA, it's got massive ramification. I know Toyota. I understand like Toyota are kind of also, I think there's a lot of manufacturers looking at it and saying, is this realistic? Not just because is it realistic for us? Can we build the cars? But we've got to build cars that there is a market for. And unless you bankrupt everybody putting like massive incentives in place, it's not going to happen. So there was almost like for me, there was almost like a realpolitik moment where it's like, people aren't just ready. You can't unless you massively incentivize it, you can't force people to buy these cars. The reason a lot of people buy these because on the lease rates, they are cheap, like really cheap. The best deals at the moment in the new space, the best deals right out there right now are EV leasing, without a shadow of doubt. They are the best deals you can get.
Yeah, 100%. And we've gone over that many times going, listen, if you're looking at an EV, now's probably the time to jump in on a lease.
But the problem with that is you don't have to be a kind of maths major to understand that the economics of that don't really work. So I think what everybody's saying is we're just not here. The market's not here. Now you obviously have an administration which is not sort of driving it for environmental reasons. So we're not here, but the ramifications to the industry and all this stuff are enormous. And the hard bit of it for me is, everybody's run in this direction for the last, decade.
Yeah.
So everything's going to be EV in Europe, in the US, in China, it already is. We're all running in this direction, and that's just where life is. So everybody models their business around that. Now in the US, you say, oh, hang on a minute. We're still sort of, there's still one path that leads there, but we're also going to run in this direction. And to run these kind of parallel tracks is really difficult and really expensive, particularly if the rest of the world isn't following suit. And even looking at, the Corvette and the sports cars and everything else, we've seen it. We talked about M5 last week on the show. Europe's legislation and Europe's regulations for emissions and everything else are now quite different to the US. So if you want to build a fast sports car, you can do that in the US. It's really hard to then export it to Europe. And it's hard for the European manufacturers to do something that, a simpler gas car or something, because they can't meet the European legislation. So it's getting very
Lotus
kind
is
of
struggling with that. Right.
Pardon?
With the Emira. Lotus is struggling with it right now, going, they can't use the engine that they're using in the Emira for
the
after a
V6
few
Toyota,
years.
the V6 Toyota engine. So we can get a V8, and you're like, really, what? So it's the US is becoming standalone, and then Europe's got going in one direction. China's already all in on EV. These are big global companies. So, I think it's a realistic recognition of where the market is and where consumer demand is, but it's got massive ramifications. And the other interesting thing, I think, reading some of the debate is it's just got so polarized that some of the claims and the counterclaims, it's like, guys, like what happened to kind of like empiricism, and like real hard data? It's just like people shouting at each other. We should have on the show, I have a friend who runs a company called Emissions Analytics, and Edmunds did some business with them a while back, and they analyze like all of these engines. I know SEMA does some of this stuff as well, but a gas engine now from a local pollutant stuff can be very, very clean as long as everything's working and it's set up right and the whole shebang. So from that perspective, it's not like kind of like massive smog problem in LA, but it's undeniable that from a CO2 perspective, from a global warming perspective, it's still that issue hasn't and won't go away. And I don't think we have to politicize the show to say that global warming is a thing. So,
we're not necessarily saying EV is going to fix that either.
We're not saying EV is going to fix that either. But it's arguably part of the solution. So it probably is part of the solution if you can get the adoption. But then there's all these kind of knock-on effect. But it's just the debate, some of the quality and the standard of the debate from a kind of technical perspective was pretty poor.
Yeah. Well, SEMA saw it as the EV mandate as removing the people's ability to choose.
Yeah,
And so that was their fight. And it sounds like so far they've been successful in their fight.
it's the classic whose freedom, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
it's got all of that kind of political student bit about it,
Yeah.
but it,
It's funny that right when it was announced that SEMA didn't win this. They were leading the charge of this fight.
yeah.
They got tens of thousands of people to sign petitions and stuff like that. Uh, and sort of like on the same page of news is uh, Dodge now going, we're not sure we're going to do our EV charger. We're not going to do the RT. We're not going to do the low level version.
No, they're
Maybe
not
we'll
going to.
have the
They're
high
just
performance version, and then maybe not at all. So we'll see what's going to happen
yeah.
there.
I'm now going that they're just going to do the Scat Pack version, which is obviously a ton of money. That's that's a yeah. I looked at that and thought, wow, that's quite a big statement. That's just looking at it and saying, we can't say, particularly if the EV tax credit goes away. I mean, this almost goes hand in hand, that it seems more and more likely that the tax credit part of the EV equation will go away. So the 7,500 off list, or if you lease it, and that means that the lease deals are going to go from like $250 perhaps to $400. And then if an EV is $400, is anybody going to buy it versus the gas car? So if you take away that, it's hard to see sustained growth in the EV space. So if you're asking me, like, if I'm looking at the market, what do I think is going to happen? I think you're going to have, I think the EV penetration will slowly creep up, but you're probably going to have, the two technologies running side by side for.
And it's got to be the right type of vehicle as well. I mean, to the Ionic 9 makes sense. Taking Dodge's brand of muscle car and turning it into EV, I just don't think was necessarily the right move. And they're finding out none of the customers wanted to buy it. So that's
Well, they did it because they felt like they had to, right? The
yeah.
world is moving in this direction. And the irony is, like Dodge, it's not like they're trying to sell in Europe. So, but it is like, we've got to do this because we're being mandated to do it. So if we got to do it, then let's try and make it as cool and interesting as possible. And, I hope everybody will transition. That is a really tough
Yeah.
sell. Same with the Jeep, really. The Jeep, we don't think is a great vehicle. Our rating and review wasn't very good. So they're being heavily incentivized to sell it. And, you know, it's tough. But then at the other end of the market, Range Rover EV, things like that,
Yeah.
there's gonna be a place for it. And, I think about how I use an EV. That's our LA car, really. We have a two-car family. We use the EV for taking the kids to school, for running around LA. And then if we do like a long distance road trip, which we know we like to do as a family, then we don't take the EV.
Yeah. You take the Edmunds Ram
We
1500.
take we
You
take
go the
the
full opposite direction.
we take the gas guzzling truck.
Yeah.
It's got an inline six now. It's not the Hemi.
Yeah.
I'm taking the truck.
Yeah. All right. On that, I think we're gonna wrap things up. We're gonna head into the weekend. I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna watch Indy 500.
Yeah, do you know what? I had a glorious couple of years ago. My wife was away with the kids, and it was the same weekend. I always remember it very fondly because I woke up, I watched Monaco Grand Prix, English Premier League, last day of the soccer season, Indy 500. Nobody interrupted me. It was like I even ordered in food that was delivered to my door,
Yeah.
and it was like one of the greatest mornings of my life. And not that I love my kids dearly, but sometimes you do need a bit of me time.
Yeah.
This Sunday, I'm on a family road trip. It's not happening.
That's it.
Yeah,
Well,
Monaco.
listen,
It is that Sunday. It's Motorsport Sunday, isn't it? Monaco Grand Prix, Indy 500. It's a great day.
like I was telling you off the air, we're fostering a puppy. You're welcome to take her on your road trip with you in your
Kids,
truck.
the kids would love it.
Talk about high energy. See, this little one just ran down the hall when Tammy left, and she had to drag her back in. She's a good dog, but the young one's full of energy. All right. All right.
Keep
We're going
me
to wrap
young.
things up, right? And
I'll try and think of a worse introduction to next week's show.
someday we're going to tell you about the Corvette ZR1. Today
Yeah.
is not that day.
Yeah.
Welcome to CarCast.
Yeah. Stay with us. We're going to talk about a Toyota RAV4.
Yeah. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Well, I guess as you're listening to this, you already had a great weekend. But
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we
thanks for
hope you
joining
enjoyed
us.
it.
Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.